You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
This week on Myopia Defend Your Childhood. Myopia Defend Your Childhood is so named because I believe we are short-sighted on the things we watched as kids. So every week we watch a movie that one of the panelists grew up watching and see if they hold up, from comedy to cartoons, horror to action. And for this season, the last Thursday of each month, we're doing a TV show in our Myopia Mornings segments. We watch Saturday morning cartoons and afternoon classics. So find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. How will you stand when we put your past on trial? Myopia Defend Your Childhood is a member of the ESO Network and produced by Dude Letter Podcasting.
Hello, and welcome again to the Monster Sci-Fi Show podcast. I am your host, The Monster. See, you have to make sure you call me The Monster, not Montgomery. No one knows who that is. So, for today's podcast, I am going to be doing, finally, Godzilla, King of the Monsters review, and I have a special guest who needs no introduction, but you kind of need to introduce you in a bit.
Yes, I do. Go ahead.
But I'm pretty sure she has not listened to all my podcasts. But if whoever is listening to this podcast and listened to my horror podcasts, the ones in which I did like different breakdowns from like 70s and 80s, I made mention to a very important person in my life who really got me into the horror genre. As much as I was for sci-fi, this was the person responsible. So with me, joining me is Michelle St. Martin. She is basically an illustrator, anchor, and former podcast field reporter for Catch the Craze. So, Michelle, thank you for being on my show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for dragging me back in.
So to speak, because...
They don't let me... What's the saying? What's the saying from The Godfather? Every time I get away, pull me back in.
Basically, that's what it is.
Anyway.
It seems like we are not able to get away from each other, so to speak, because you've been probably the oldest friend that I've known ever. Like, we're talking like even elementary school.
Don't say the date. Oh my God. Shush. Don't say the date. I'm still a woman and I'm still very vanity stricken. Don't say the date. Say,
so you're saying you're not so last century. You're this century. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. I'll take that. Whatever.
All right.
Go ahead.
We still had school back then, and we went with dinosaurs to and from school.
We met. When did we meet? In fifth grade, right?
I think so.
Fifth grade.
Yeah, and we were in the exact same class for a long time. But then junior high school, we had different classes, but still the exact same grade, and we still had the same circles. And we had the tight group with us. High school, we kind of still kept in touch because even though we were at literally two different high schools, we still had a great friendship throughout the years. And many times you would come over to my house or your house and we just watch crappy ass sci-fi movies or horror movies and just laugh our ass off. Those are the things.
Remember?
Yeah.
Remember that store that was across the street from you that had all those really crazy, horrible movies? They were like the first Kim's Video. They were incredible. They had all these movies for rent, and we would just get anything and just like go over your house or my house and just watch them.
Right, and I made the mistake, based on your recommendation, to rent a snuff movie. And I'm like...
What the hell was that? What?
Because it was in the Fangoria cover. At the back of the cover, it's like, there's a snuff video promoting this movie called Snuff. And I'm like, okay, you kind of told me about it. And I'm like... And the guy looking at me is like, how old are you? I'm like, I'm 18. I'm not really. And then realized that was...
how old we were.
That was legit bad. I'm like, okay, this is kind of fake, right? They're like, no, that's not what snuff movies mean. So I was kind of
I
traumatized
saw
by
that
that.
movie when I was 4.
That explains a lot.
It does, doesn't it? It does. It really does. It does, and I'm not ashamed.
But yeah, I'll never forget that one. But nonetheless, it's one of those,
Yeah, get this. It's great.
you broadened my horizon in such a great way. So I really owe you so much. And I really want to get back into
You're
horror movies
welcome.
again. So maybe in the future we'll talk about the more recent horror movies for this century, so to speak, because I kind of stopped at 2000.
Yeah, when they get better. But anyway, that's another.
Right, exactly. Oh, okay. So let's talk about the Big G. I texted
Yep.
you finding out what you were been watching, and then saw a whole list of movies. I'm like, hey, I haven't seen Godzilla yet, but I plan to, and like, let's try to do a podcast on that. And I'm so happy,
Right.
beyond ecstatic, that you're able to do this with me. So
Yay!
I'm really happy to have you.
Good.
And besides, I think because of our like-mindedness and the chemistry we have, I think it should be an easy thing for us to do. After all this time, I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah. We love
Yeah.
Godzilla. Although
Yes.
there are issues that we will talk about throughout the podcast, but mainly let's talk about in general about Godzilla. Over the years, were there any particular Godzilla movies you loved? Those you thought were just goddamn stupid? Just
Oh. Well, of course. I wasn't too into the first Godzilla. I couldn't get into it. I mean, it was intended to actually be serious, if
Right.
you believe that.
of course.
So it was Raymond Burke and all that stuff, and then the thing with the cuts and all that, blah, 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 blah. So I wasn't, and it's black and white and blah, 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 and I knew it was a commentary on, all the, the nuclear, bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, blah, 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 and things on the environment and all that. But my favorite, besides Mothra versus Godzilla, big surprise,
Right.
two stand out in mine, and they're both from the Showa period, I believe. King Kong versus Godzilla,
Right.
because I saw that every year during Thanksgiving on Channel 9, they would have like a Godzilla marathon,
Pretty
and
much.
big events, and I had to stay in front of the damn TV and watch this stuff. And then my second favorite is Godzilla versus the Smog Monster.
Oh my God.
I think it's Ghidorah.
Ghidorah,
It's
yeah.
Godzilla versus
Nerd.
Ghidorah, whatever. And that's my all-time favorite,
Wow.
But aside from that, I'm really obscure because aside from those,
Mm-hmm.
which have nothing to do with Godzilla, but they're totally like, what do I say, kaiju or titan? Anyway, we'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
My favorites are War of the Gargantuas
Right.
and Frankenstein Conquers the World,
Mm.
because they were so freaking twisted
Yes, they were.
and out there, even for kaiju, that I was like, this is insane. What the hell am I watching? I must have more of this in my life. So I love those. But aside from that, it's got to be, I think my all-time favorite is Godzilla versus Ghidorah.
Right. When
The
you
thing with the
mentioned
environment and then,
when you mentioned the War of the Gargantuans, it reminded me so much of my cousin Ralph and I, and how like the good guy, the orange one, was me, and the green one was him.
The good-looking one, the handsome.
Which color are we referring to? The brown one or the green one? Because I may have issues with you now. I broke a leg and saved people, whereas the other one ate other people. So
we all have a little bit of the orange and the green in our
sure. But I always thought that's my cousin's and I's relationship since like day one. We've always been kind of like fighting at each other. I'm trying to put him on the straight and narrow, and he does dumb, stupid shit, and then that happens. We both kill each other, something like that. So,
All right.
but it's one of those movies that, like, yeah, we've been watching that crap on TV, regular TV, nonstop. And even once in a while, I kind of miss that nostalgia of when it just plays on TV and you have to sit through it. And like most kaiju movies, you're not going to get a whole lot of action at the very beginning and not maybe in the middle, but towards the end, you get the big fight sequence, and going to like King Kong versus Godzilla, which I kind of actually watched a little bit yesterday. And I looked at the time, and literally it's the last 10 minutes that those two fight. So when I hear when I hear people complain about, the 2014 Godzilla didn't have enough fighting, I'm like, it had enough fighting.
People were complaining about.
Yeah, so it had enough fighting compared to what has been done before. And yeah, the human stories are
why
terrible.
Why are you complaining? This is the way they're all set up.
Right.
Why are you complaining? Shut up and watch the movie.
So that's the kind of thing that pisses me off, because like, you're not a kaiju fan if you don't know that kind of history. That's what we've been dealing with all our lives, is, a low bar with the story and kind of campiness with the kaiju fighting, That's what we've grown to love.
Right.
So yeah, now we get this big production, and I like that. So
I think I was one of the few that was actually happy with that. With the fact that you don't get to see Godzilla until, much later on. That's the build-up, man.
Right.
And let me tell you, I admit it, and I am a woman, and I admit it, I cried. I did, because it was such a long time since I saw Godzilla on the big screen like that.
Wow.
And it was just freaking, I saw it in IMAX with only 4 of us fucking there. Me and 3 other friends of ours, we saw it on an early showing, and I'll probably mention this again because it alludes to something else. It goes into something else.
Right.
But it was a rainy day, like real, like torrential downpour. And we were the only morons going to the theater in New Rochelle to see it in IMAX.
Wow.
And I think a few other people were there and just us. And it was probably one of the most heavenly movie experiences I ever had. So I'm biased when it comes to the first Godzilla as opposed to this one. Even though I enjoyed this one immensely. But we'll talk about that later. But,
I saw the 2014 in 3D, which I loved a lot. Not that it had a whole lot of elements. It just felt a lot more immersive. So, but again, and I watched Godzilla again, the new one, also in 3D, kind of keeping in that kind of vein, because I love that feeling of just being really in those moments, and more so now than I did in the past. Like, I couldn't give a crap that, if I get Godzilla versus King Kong, that I have to buy it on Blu-ray, or I need to get the 4K edition. The crappier it looks, the better. I'm good with that.
Right. Well, we're from another era.
Right.
A lot of people are, they know about Godzilla, but they weren't into it like the way we were. We grew up with it.
Right.
And, we go with that. I have a lot of other friends who are like extreme Godzilla enthusiasts, and they'd agree. They'd be like, the 4K and the blah, 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 blah. But it's just, it's Godzilla, goddammit. He's like a part of us, I have a friend for Christmas one year up in the Bronx. He lived in the Bronx at the time, and we were all worked at Forbidden Planet, and that's when I started getting back into Godzilla again in the 90s.
Right.
And he actually threw for Christmas a Christmas versus Godzilla party, where you had to dress in something Japanese, like a kimono or something. Bring your own Godzilla doll, and they built a whole Tokyo village in gingerbread.
Holy crap!
And we had to destroy the village, and we got to take the gingerbread home with our dolls.
Wow!
It was incredible. Well, this is what I grew up with, man. This is even in my later years. It's like, in real life come in and just destroy a city like this, you know? So when people get all irritated about this, you know, get to see him until, it's like, do you know the history of this creature? Do you know the history of this monster? Do you know kaiju history at all?
Right.
Get out of the theater. I don't want to talk to you. Anyway.
So I think my very first Godzilla that I got to see on the screen was back in 73, and that's Godzilla versus Megalon. And I remember back, it was there was a theater, I forget, I'm trying to remember the street in the Bronx, but it was right by the 6th line, somewhere near Soundview. There was some kind of theater there.
Okay.
So I remember the poster on the marquee, and it's Godzilla and Megalon on the Twin Towers, which was lies.
Yes!
Which was
in the subway. Yeah.
fucking lies. And I'm like, they're not anywhere in New York whatsoever. And I got really pissed.
No, not one.
But
no.
But nonetheless, it was a cool-ass movie just because Jet Jaguar made that movie for me. So, Godzilla, yes.
Yes.
But Jet Jaguar, holy fuck. That's the kind of movie that I want to see. And it was a great team-up. Whereas Jet Jaguar, Godzilla versus Gigan versus Megalon. And, oh my God, what a joy it was to see that movie on the big screen. You know, and I was only, 6 by that time? So that hit me in the right age, you know.
Wow.
There was, trying to remember, I think the first Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla was the second one that I saw. And if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's King Caesar that is kind of like this weird puppy dog demon that comes out of a cave.
Yeah.
So that's also one of a cool team up against Space Godzilla. And not Space Godzilla, Mecha Godzilla. And there's one moment that threw me completely for a loop. Mecha Godzilla is in the middle. He turns his head one way to face, I don't know, I think it's like King Caesar, whereas the rest of the body is aimed at Godzilla. And he's firing in both directions. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. That is fucking amazing. That was oh my God, I just love that shot so much. I mean, it's mind-blowing, you know. So it goes without saying that, you know, those are the moments that I cherish, and I look forward to seeing more Godzilla done in a much better, more fantastical way that has never been done before. And even though, like, the Millennium series later on in the late 90s and early 2000s really improved the effects tremendously, it really is not until we get finally really a best treatment for Godzilla in the 2014 and then kind of launch this monsterverse for us, so to speak, in a way that I'm like, this is an amazing universe to kind of delve into. And I think each episode, so to speak, the Godzilla, then Kong, Skull Island, and then this one, it has kind of fleshed out a lot more about Monarch, about the Titans, and I'm like, this is fucking incredible. I cannot stop loving everything about that whole universe now. So
yeah, it's really done kind of like a weird, dare I say, full circle. Does that make sense? Because it started off serious, and then it got to a period when it got really campy, and he was everybody's, you know, almost big lizard teddy bear kind of thing. He's gonna save the world. It's so cute, you know. Look at his face. Oh, look at him go so. Oh, look at so cute. And then it started, I guess, maybe toward the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say started getting serious again.
Right.
And, you know, until they got up to Shin Godzilla, which is like, what the hell is this?
There was a time travel element, too, that took Godzilla from, I think, the 50s, brought him to the 90s, so he would never be the exact same Godzilla that we grew up with, the campiness.
Right.
It became the more darker version of them. Like, oh, like, that's fucking amazing that they would do that. And it became its own thing. I was like, I'm kind of digging this. That Godzilla is,
Yeah.
a badass.
Yeah,
Right.
and they allude to that, in the new movie, in King of the Monsters, where they're like, oh, he's gonna save the Earth, oh, they're gonna be all, they're gonna save the planet and the environment, and then I think it's Eileen Chen, I think her name is one of the twins.
Right.
We'll talk about that later too. He says, for now. So I was like, oh, this is gonna get real now.
Yeah, and that's the kind of build-up that I'm like, I kind of called it at the end, and I'm like, because we know that Godzilla and King Kong are going to meet, there has to be some kind of common enemy that they're going to have to join forces. Because just like with Batman versus Superman, they're not going to beat the hell out of each other, and like one of them is going to be killed. You're not going to do that.
Right.
So they wind up getting...
I agree.
They wind up getting Doomsday, which was, not the greatest, but there is the element in which they both join up and they start fighting together. So, but King Ghidorah...
Right. That's inevitable, yeah.
Right. So, because even in the original movie, it is kind of... You're given a sense that Godzilla didn't make it, and King Kong swims away, that he's the victor. But we never see Godzilla really destroyed, so to speak. He wasn't killed.
Right.
So we'll see what happens. But again, I don't think that will ever happen. Like Alien versus Predator. They never gave you a clear side of, well, aliens are better than predators or vice versa. You're not going to get that. They were basically evenly matched. Same thing like with Jason versus Freddy. Jason kicked Freddy's ass in the real world, but when it came to the dream world, Jason got his ass kicked by Freddy. So each got their own, their own comeuppance and their own environment to do the most damage, but it always comes out to be a draw. And I'm like, all right. So that happened, but still.
Right. Well, they got to make more films somehow.
Yeah.
So that's not going to happen. You have these two iconic, you have these iconic monsters,
right,
or figures that it's like, no, you can't die. You just can't die. We got to keep them alive somehow.
Right.
Something has to remain.
Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, which I'm like, anytime someone mentions this, either you get laughed out of the room, or you get like pissed off because they haven't done this. Gamera. Where does Gamera fit in all this?
I don't know. You know what? I thought he was going to be... Actually, I thought he was going to be in the first one. But that turned out to be a big old lie because I remember... I don't know. I could be wrong because I haven't seen the trailers in a while. I remember for the 2014 Godzilla, there was a trailer that leaked, and they showed the aftermath of the carnage of like a city.
Right.
I guess it was San Francisco at the time that was annihilated. And you could clearly see the silhouette of Gamera in the rubble.
Okay.
And I think it was Gamera. I don't know. I could be wrong. Correct me, or leave comments or whatever. Nice comments, because my memory could be shot in a while. So, but I was like, oh my God, Gamera's a beast! And I like. I even think I saved it somewhere. I don't know. It was probably on my previous computer or whatever, my hard drive.
I think he gets no respect whatsoever. It's always been Godzilla. It's King. Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, Gamera also has his own kind of sort of universe too. But the two of them never cross whatsoever.
Yeah. I don't get it. And I don't know what's in terms of the future of the film.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's going to show up. It would be nice somehow if he could. I mean, I don't see it happening in Godzilla vs. Kong. I just don't.
No, I don't see it at all as well. But I don't see Gamera being even mentioned whatsoever.
Yeah, which is weird. Yeah,
So-
he wasn't mentioned in the MonsterVerse in King of the Monsters at all.
So I'm just kind of ticked because Gamera was also one of those cool-ass creatures And my daughter, when she was growing up, thought she was a flying artichoke, basically. Kind of, that weird shell design, and he's flying and all this. But, I've always felt back in the day, the 4:30 movie back in New York, when they would do Monster League. Gamera would always be one of those favorite ones that I would watch growing right after school, putting on the 4:30 movie, and Gamera was there.
Right.
And I'm like, it's just as compelling as the other ones.
Yeah, exactly. I think Gamera has his own fandom.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what's going to happen with that.
Yeah,
I really don't. But I was kind of pissed. I was like, well, how come he's not mentioned in the MonsterVerse here? I don't understand.
Right.
Someone hold me, please. I don't know.
No, you really do have to acknowledge that there is a world in which Gamera does exist in the same universe as Kong and Godzilla. So we'll see how that goes. Putting the fantasy side of the wish list of what we want for Godzilla. What are your thoughts about as a whole, the whole MonsterVerse franchise? Do you think that after King Kong versus Godzilla or Godzilla versus King Kong, do we see another movie or another series after this, or do you think this is it? One more movie and we're done?
I don't know. I see it going on in some fashion. I do see this going to the big screen as opposed to something like a streaming service like Netflix, or am I allowed to say Netflix? Or,
I don't get any paid sponsors, so you can say whatever you want.
Or the Hulu or the Amazon or whatever. I don't know. I probably am going to get sued. Sued big time. But anyway, I don't see it going that route.
Right.
I see it going big screen because a lot of people want to see this, and it's going to look damn. If they do it right, it's going to look damn good on a big screen, whether it be IMAX, 3D, whatever. In terms of it going on, I see it going on in some fashion afterward.
Right.
But so far, I still see it on the big screen.
I think
at least this one.
Right. Because I think, with the initial Godzilla release and Kong Skull Island, my feeling is that because of the third outing of this movie in the MonsterVerse, it seems that it feels very niche, that it's really meant for geeks like you and me, and the next generation, like my kids, to watch it again and again and again. But it's not enough of a mass appeal, let's say, like the Avengers they did with Endgame. I don't see that on that level, although I can easily compare the 2014 Godzilla to like the first Iron Man movie, and then Kong Skull Island kind of going back in the past, and that being the Captain America version. And then the two of them will have a civil war in the next movie. So that's where I'm like, you can easily match it up easily with the Marvel Universe. But I don't know why there doesn't feel like everyone should be loving this as much as we are. And I think maybe it's just a select few that care about monster movies after all this time. Like, it's too, I don't know, unbelievable to have monsters roaming around as opposed to superheroes. I don't know. Right.
Well, I do think they're trying. They're trying for a more mainstream appeal, but I also think that the people who are making these movies, they pretty much know what they're doing in terms of the history, that's for sure. In terms of, the whole MonsterVerse history, in terms of what Godzilla is about. Let's face it, it's not the 1998 Godzilla.
Nope. We shall not talk about that disaster with Matthew Broderick. God damn it.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I hurt everybody by mentioning that one. But I won't again. But they know the history and they have respect for it, and they're really trying to bring in the old fans as well as some of the new, because I do see it, but it's enough that we're getting all the the references
Right.
to the past,
Which I
which
loved.
is fantastic.
I
Of course,
squeaked
of course.
when I heard
Yeah.
the two sisters and the song. I'm like, oh, no, really?
Oh,
The princesses, the twins. I can't believe they're making a reference to the twins.
I was like, oh my God, I see what you did there. I see what you did. I see what you did. Oh my God, it's so cute. Oh my God, thank God. I'm so happy.
And honestly,
You know?
I did not realize it. There were actually twins. I thought it was the exact same character, just at different points, and I didn't realize there actually are twins. They were never together, but they were twins. So I thought that was kind of cool.
It took me a little while to get it.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh my God, they did it. They did it. Oh my God, somebody knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Somebody knows the history. This is amazing. It's amazing.
I mean, it's those kind of moments that made me sit forward in my seat from the very beginning to the very end, and I was just enthralled. And the criticisms that people have for 2014, I understand, but if you're going to complain now that the human story got in the way, you're a goddamn idiot, because that was never the case in the first one, and this one did a better job to not be like some weird story that has nothing to do with anything except for, well, we need to pay these human actors to do something, and has nothing to do with story. And then Godzilla and fights a creature, the end. No, they became part of that story. And I think for me, the mother, I forgot her name, Dr. Russell, when we see the flashback and we saw, them calling out for their son, and from the aftermath in San Francisco, I thought that's going to be like a callback with like Batman versus Superman, where Bruce Wayne looks up in the sky and sees Superman flying, and he has this hatred for Superman. And then he's going to build up to that point where he's going to do some damage to him. I thought the mom was going to do the exact same thing, because she came up with this device, and I'm like, that doesn't look good. It's like, it's completed, it's done. I'm like, oh, she's going to kill Godzilla or something. But what made it interesting is that she was trying to help cure the Earth using the Titans as a way of fixing the climate, which, if you go back to the very first Godzilla movie, being an environmental movie and a cautionary tale, this plays into that all the way through. So I think her argument about when there's a fever, a body would raise its temperature to kill the infection. All these Titans will do the exact same thing, and I bought that argument without a problem. And I think that's solid. Compared to what the crap that you've seen back in the 60s, this is a solid story. And then all the way through, I was enthralled.
And if they do it right, I see them continuing it.
Right.
Because some of them, a lot of these kaiju, I'm sorry,
Titans.
are, oh God.
TM. Trademark.
I was like, Watanabe, would you just call it kaiju? You are Japanese. Why don't you just Titans? Don't dumb us down. Just call them kaiju. But anyway.
God forbid we'll get our Wrath of the Titans.
I lost my train of thought with the kaiju reference.
Sorry.
Oh, Titan reference. Sorry. I completely lost my train of thought. It doesn't matter. I'll get to it in a Tourette's moment.
Okay. But let's go. Let's talk about the Titans. We have 17 creatures now, right? In addition to Godzilla.
And counting from what I understand.
Right, exactly. So, there's still hope for Gamera-ish.
I just cannot believe that there was absolutely no mention or even so much of anything as an off-camera reference.
Yeah. I mean,
to it, because there was a reference to so many others.
Right. I mean, Kong is not in this movie, but there was plenty of references to Kong and Skull Island. So we could have easily dropped a Gamera in there too. So, but what do we care? A lot.
Yeah, I know. Nothing.
So,
Nothing. I mean, Jesus. But even a whole listing there was even a whole non-camera reference listing of all these other kaiju.
right, which I'm like, I have no idea. So aside from the big G, which we know Mothra.
Uh-huh.
Mothra was fucking amazing. And I never thought, they fought together like with Rodan and Mothra and Godzilla against King Ghidorah many years ago. But to see just Mothra and Godzilla, their relationship, I never would have seen that coming. That she's
the love thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, damn, they're really referencing on that. They're really getting in there, aren't they? Jeez. The soulmate thing. It was like, oh.
And even though you did say you didn't have enough Mothra, I thought, look, at least it left me wanting more. And not like, that's way too much Mothra, that kind of thing.
She's coming back. She's coming back. If not that Mothra, there's going to be another one.
Of course.
She's always resurrected.
Of course.
Yeah.
But I think there was an elegance to Mothra that I've never seen before, even with the Millennium movies that they did. I thought it was beautiful. I was just enthralled with what Mothra did, and even she knows she's not going to win against King Ghidorah. Just, I'll go ahead and attack the best as I can while Godzilla tries to recover. And she gets wiped out, But she does take out a bit Rodan, which I was kind of mad that, he survived, but she didn't, that kind of thing. So I was kind of pissed at Rodan, of all things.
Right.
But I love Rodan, too. Rodan also became a really fantastic-looking creature. And even the sequences of him flying after the fighter jets, amazing. It was a joy to see that. And I felt bad for that pilot that ejected and flew right into Rodan's mouth.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, Charlie. Not today. But I have to give kudos for Monster Zero or Ghidorah, the way that creature looked. Oh my fucking god! Yeah, I was just
beautiful,
amazing,
beautiful.
The wingspan.
Of course, I was impressed. I was very impressed with the way all the monsters are designed, and forget it. I wouldn't have expected anything less.
And then we get to
beautiful.
Yeah, and then we get to like lesser known, and like I think they just created this for the MonsterVerse. Maybe it's because of licensing issues. I don't know, but they created Scylla, which was the spider-looking creature. We have Behemoth, which is kind of like a cross between a gorilla and a woolly mammoth, which I thought that's kind of interesting. Muto Prime. I had to look this up because I'm like, wait, is that the Muto from the first movie in 2014? It's another Muto.
Muto 1, 2, 3, from what I understand.
Yeah.
I was like, Muto 1, 2, and 3. Okay.
So there is indeed another Muto. I'm like, holy crap, that's awesome.
Right.
So we did see or hear mention of Kong. So he was there, and the rest, I'm just like, I don't remember any of them whatsoever. Mocha Mbebe was another one. Baphomet.
Right. There's Baphomet, Tiamat. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing a lot of these.
Typhoon.
Forgive me. Yeah, Typhoon, Abaddon.
Leviathan.
Abaddon. Sorry.
Leviathan and Sargon.
And those weren't even seen.
Right, and Burnham. So I'm like, I don't even remember. Maybe if I go back and watch it again, and I'm sure there'll be like a quick clip or a news article that talking about that. That's probably why we'll see about them and what they did. Because I'm like, honestly, it felt like, okay, after all this, it really boiled down to just the four main creatures fighting, which is Rodan, Ghidorah versus Mothra and Godzilla. Which, like I said, with Godzilla versus Megalon, they paired up and it became an awesome fight. Would I've loved to have seen a battle royale? Maybe. I would love to see a lot more creatures fighting, but they were all being summoned.
Yeah. Hopefully, with all these other ones brought up in some form of fashion, they'll bring them out.
Yeah.
I don't think, in reference to your question before, your previous question,
Yeah.
a while back, I don't think this is the end. I think that basically, we're going to see a lot more. We're going to see a lot more of a lot of Titans fighting.
Right.
And maybe even, like you said, standing together for some purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But I also see the dark side coming out. So this should be interesting.
Yeah, and I think because all the other creatures, so to speak, when they finally get to Boston, kind of like spoilers, give Godzilla his credence. Basically, he is the alpha out of everyone. But things are happening on Skull Island in which King Kong never heeded the calls. So now there seems to be like a push now for everyone to go visit Skull Island, as in to say, what the fuck's wrong with you?
Skull Island, first attraction of.
So I'm kind of curious to see how that happens.
I'm also very curious in another aspect because this is the biggest Godzilla ever. He's like 393 feet tall. I don't know what that is in meters. Forgive me, Europe.
We're not in Europe, so screw the meters.
He's the largest Godzilla ever. So how is this going to work with King Kong?
I've been looking at a lot of videos, and I think because King Kong, when we see him, Kong Skull Island is still, not an adult. He is still going to be growing. So for the 30 years plus since we saw him, he should be as huge, if not basically at his level, height-wise.
Okay, because even in King Kong versus Godzilla back in the day, it was like, what's happening? What's going on here? Hello? What is this thing on? But, it was still fun to watch. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just like, is this guy going to grow? He has to grow. He's got to get bigger because... But that's a good point. I didn't even think about that. I was like, wait a minute. He's not full grown yet.
Now, going back to Godzilla versus King Kong, there was a point in which King Kong gets knocked out, and there's lightning, and then King Kong somehow gets electrocuted, and he has these kind of electrical powers. And he starts zapping Godzilla at close range. So I'm not saying that, King Kong has to have powers like Godzilla's fire atomic breath, but I think the advantage from what we saw in the first movie is that he's smart and can create weapons. So he has enough, and plus if it's going to be on his turf, he has a lot already on his side. Now, if we're going to think about this, Godzilla is a long-range fighter. So at a distance, he has the atomic breath. He can keep you away for however long. But close fighting, King Kong has yet because he's got huge arms. Godzilla has crap. He can't even scratch his own ass, let alone fight anything. Right. So what? He'll scratch him? Maybe. He'll bite the hell out of King Kong? Yeah. And he's got his tail? Good. And he has the firepower. But close range, Godzilla will get his ass kicked.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm totally looking forward to this.
And honestly, anything other than, if you look at the original movie, at one point, you'll see like a pagoda in one, like left-hand part of the screen. In the distance, in the mountains, you'll see two figures. They look like action figures. They're just like someone is hiding underneath the set and just moving these two action figures, swatting each other.
Talking about, I remember.
It is the worst thing, but it's the funniest thing ever. So anything they can improve from that, it's a win in my book. So,
I
my God.
wonder how many references they're gonna put in, because I know nothing about this. I'm keeping away from it on purpose, believe it or not.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to see any spoilers. I don't want to know nothing. I don't want to know anything about production. I don't want to know anything, effects, anything.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be stoked. You know, I don't want to be jaded. You know, and it's going to be really interesting to see how many references these guys are going to put in from the original King Kong versus Godzilla, because I know they're going to sneak some stuff in there. I know they are.
Yeah, and I hope they do. I just hope that, okay, we don't need to see, you know, the literal translation of what they did in the first movie, because it was god-awful, about Kong being transported.
Please, no.
Or him fighting an actual, I think, a live squid or an octopus, because they didn't have the budget to create one. So they have really crappy green screen technology.
On Skull Island, they have a lot more monsters, too. They have a lot more things hiding in the bushes and all kinds of goodies.
Right.
So, you know,
and
it should be fun.
Yeah, and I think that what made that movie a lot more fun, because, not taking away from the 2014 Godzilla movie, but right from the beginning, you have even a better human story, and you had Samuel L. Jackson as the bad guy, who needs to fight another war, so to speak, and does not let go of the fact that he's going to take down Kong. And I love that.
Right.
So screw the fact that you have a problem with human stories. These have been the best stories so far, interacting with kaijus, with humans. You're not going to get that with the classic stuff, you know?
To be honest, and sorry for the way this is going to come off, people, but I don't see Godzilla for the human story anyway. I mean, maybe in some small aspects, yes, with the environment and the this and the that and the blah, blah. But I don't see it for that. I see it for fighting titans.
I know.
I see it for the emergence of my favorite monsters coming out of the depths and either saving the day or destroying cities or destroying each other.
Right. Now, it's the cherry on the icing in the cake and all that fun Sunday stuff that we see, you know, a great story from beginning to end. Unlike, like, you know, Godzilla being abducted with Mothra and Rodan to, along with Monster Zero, with the aliens who are really like a really bad punk band from the 60s, and their space outfits. And I'm like, you know, we can just move forward a lot quicker if we didn't have this crap. Because all we care about is the
all
fighting.
in all, though, in terms of enjoying the movie, and in terms of me liking it, of course I did. I loved it. But I'm a little bit biased, as opposed, you know, I mean, in terms of the 2014 Godzilla,
right.
I like that one a little more, and maybe because I am biased, because I saw it in a huge IMAX theater with no one around, enjoying it, and I hadn't seen it in years, you know, on a big screen, and I was just enthralled, so I remember that experience. This was a little different for me, but all in all, I did enjoy it. It was a great summer film. I love the way they brought in the other, you know, the Titans, and they kept basically to the history.
Yes.
Of, you know, the MonsterVerse, which I appreciated immensely. There were some silly aspects, but I was like, how the hell did this girl know where her house was in this apocalypse?
I would just argue, it's like, really? She made it all the way home without a scratch, with everything going on. Bull crap.
And then she comes into the house and she sees her picture, and I'm like, how the hell did this girl know that?
And she jumps in the bathtub and survives the house being falling on her.
I was like, really? Okay, I guess you had to put something in there.
Yeah.
But I was
sure,
like,
we'll go with that.
a movie about Godzilla. So
it was fine. You know, it's those little moments that are like, fine. It doesn't ruin the movie.
Yeah.
It just moves the story forward. That's all.
Right. It's like, can we move way forward, please, before I start?
So, what else did you like about watching Godzilla?
God. Well, aside from the story, I pretty much have said everything I liked about it.
Right.
What I didn't like was not a lot. It was just a little over exposition for me.
Mm-hmm.
Little over explaining. You know, I keep throwing out the kaiju versus titan thing. I was like, don't dumb us down like that. People know what kaiju are. It's like, why are you calling it titans? Stop calling it titans. They're kaiju. But maybe that's because, you know, we know what they are.
Right. Or,
you know?
Or I think they might just say, look, Pacific Rim was fine. The first one was fantastic. Second one, not great. But they don't want to be paired up with that. Because I think at one point they were contemplating an idea of a crossover with the Jaegers versus Godzilla, which I'm like, okay, that might work. But then we got Uprising, which was god-awful. You know, it didn't have the exact same beauty as Guillermo del Toro's movie because that was just fucking amazing. Just seeing the dedication and the fight sequence alone just blew me away. And the fantastic soundtrack on top of all that. You know, that also has a compelling human story. You know, so
yeah, that is another aspect that I like, the soundtrack.
Yeah. So
the soundtrack was, you know, Bear McCready did an excellent job once again.
Which I did not realize he did the soundtrack, and normally I would be like, I should be knowing this because I've loved his work since Battlestar Galactica, and he did another great series called Defiance, which it's a better soundtrack by itself rather than the series itself. He did the theme for The Walking Dead, Terminator, the Sarah Connor Chronicles.
He did the theme song to something I have on my playlist, Black Sails.
Yes.
Which I love.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I'm still watching, unfortunately, but it's a fantastic score for that theme. So it when I listen to the soundtrack, and it does a remake of the Go-Go Godzilla, but with like this tribal chant along with this. Oh my God. I was just floored by how wonderful it sounds. Like, I've never heard this version. And it ties in everything.
Yep.
Oh my God.
And he also incorporated the Mothra theme.
Yes, and the traditional Godzilla theme, too. And I'm like, that's beautiful.
Even at the end credits, of course, put in the Oyster Cult's Godzilla.
Yeah. So, oh my God.
How could you not?
I know, and that's a given. And I know you don't have to put that in every single Godzilla movie, but I don't think it ever entered in the consciousness of the 1998 version, right? It never played. Did it?
No, which is weird. Yeah,
okay.
No.
So you would think an American Godzilla version would have that be part of it somehow, but, you know, we'll talk about that crap.
Never again, never again.
Yeah. So if there was for me any lowlights, and this is me just being a traditional fan of kaijus or King Ghidorah, the roar that he would do in the other movies, kind of like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's the King Ghidorah sound. It's not in this movie. He has his own roar, and it's okay. But I miss that weird 60s psychedelic noise that he generated back in the day.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that I would nitpick over because I'm like, I have a gold-looking car that I named King Ghidorah, and my co-host, Mr. Gene, got me a small little King Ghidorah figure that I keep in my car. So I've always been a King Ghidorah fan since the longest time, but I'm like, yes, he looks fantastic, but he's missing the sound for me to make it all work together. Hopefully, in the next movie, because that's the common enemy that I'm thinking it's going to be. Maybe we'll get a mecha King Ghidorah, and that sound will be generated. I hope they do. That will make me ecstatic. Other than that, you did mention that some of the scenes were filmed dark, and I kind of agree with you on a couple points. Godzilla and King Ghidorah at night, I'm like, I can't see a goddamn thing, even in 3D.
It's dark. It's dark. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I don't know if it had to do with the theater that I was at or what.
No, I agree.
Or whatever.
There are issues.
Okay.
And I think, which is weird, that there were a lot of fights that Godzilla's had over the years, and there were some that were taken in broad daylight. I think because of, again, the environmental story, like what King Ghidorah represents of climate change and literally flooding of Washington, D.C., and all the rainstorms, the Category 6 hurricanes that it was generating. So it was dark all the way because it was generating this. So I can forgive it for looking in that way, but I would love to have seen like this one imagery moment that blew me away: King Ghidorah on the volcano, and in the foreground you see that cross in front. Oh my God, I want that as a poster so much because that's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Oh my God. So that's the kind of thing.
One of the black market or in Japan or something.
I guess so, but that's just the kind of stuff I'm like, I want to see the monsters in all its glory, and it was amazing. Yeah. So, but you know, at least I got a couple of good shots like that.
Yeah, true. I was just like, more, give me more. Why are you doing this? Was it hard?
One of my favorite moments, this is a quick little shot when Watanabe went in the sub to revive Godzilla, and he carries the nuke, and then of course it explodes. But when Godzilla comes out of the water, and Mark Russell, the dad, is on top of the sub, and Godzilla gives him like a quick stare down. Like, I know what you fucking did to me, you fucker. And I'm like, it was just like, I wouldn't be opposed for Godzilla to take his ass out and just burn him up alive, you know, because he was the one.
I kind of wish he would have a little. I don't know.
So I'm like, go ahead and do it. No one's watching. But it was just this quick little reaction that he gave that I was just like, ooh, I felt that anger looking at him. So that's the kind of moments that I'm like, oh my God, you went above and beyond making a kaiju movie. Sorry, Titans movie.
Yeah, it's little moments like that are thrown in there that make it kind of worthwhile, you know?
And then, you know, we're not giving too much away, but I will say this, and I'm really hating the way this was told to me. Because I did a Game of Thrones podcast before this, right? So I stayed away for like a majority for this last season and was watching the final season, and I was telling someone, oh, I'm on the final episode. And then someone at work told me, oh, so does this. And I'm like, what? I'm on the goddamn last episode, and you're telling me the big plot point here. So moving forward from that pain, I worked the Sunday that I told you that I was working at, and there's a kid that works with one of the employees there, and I asked him if he saw Godzilla because he's a big Godzilla fan, and he loves when I used to work there, and I would have my Nintendo GameCube, and we would play Godzilla. So I asked him, "Did you see Godzilla?" He's like, "Yeah, I loved it. King Ghidorah dies." I'm like, "Dude, do you not know I haven't seen the movie yet?" And I'm like, I swear to God, if the mom wasn't in the next room, I would have just strangled him. I'm like, God damn it. You know, I cannot get a break. God damn you. And, you know, I like the kid a lot because if you look at my Instagram feed, he drew a picture of Godzilla for me. And I'm like, I'm ecstatic that he did that for me because I love that branch. And I'm like, so, you know, we have a commonality with Godzilla, but then he spoiled it for me. Literally. And then he's like, well, it was obvious. I'm like, dude, I haven't seen the goddamn movie. So I'm trying not to curse out of the little kid, but I'm like, fuck you. How dare you?
No, fuck you. That's it. No more bucks for you.
Son of a bitch. So,
well, you know he's dead, but he ain't dead. Come on.
I know, but still, I have not seen that movie since it came out for like 2 or 3 weeks. And I purposely try to avoid everything on the news, and I did a very good job. And lo and behold, one person, one little kid just ruins the goddamn ending. Shit. Not that I'm bitter.
No, not at all.
No.
Just so. But...
So, other than that, it still, was enjoyable, despite the fact that I knew what was coming, because honestly...
No, I liked it. I did.
Yeah. Honestly, they're not going to kill Godzilla. And that's the other word that I wanted to pose to you. Is it a worry that, out of all the Godzilla movies, maybe 1 or 2 in which Godzilla does not survive, or like, I forget which one in the Millennium series, Godzilla gets sucked up into a black hole, basically. Because they didn't know how to get rid of him. So they got rid of him that way. So he's always been the good guy. He always wins the fight. Is there a danger to make Godzilla always the good guy?
See, but that's the thing. And that's the reference that I'm referring to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, near the end, I guess, of King of the Monsters.
Yeah.
Where, they're like, oh, he's there to save the day, or they're here to save the day, and whatever the hell is said, or whatever. It's been a while. I saw it like about 3 or 4 weeks ago, so, forgive me. And then Chen goes, for now.
Yeah.
It was like that. So I don't know about that. That's what I'm saying. This is going to be very interesting as to how this is all going to pan out in the Monsterverse. Because, like I said, they're going a more serious route now. And right now, he's the good guy. Who knows if that's going to last?
Who knows, indeed.
I don't think so. I think they're going to deal with some darkness going on in the future.
Yeah, honestly, if the way you're going to have to boil down is that you can only have one alpha, and Kong is not having any of it.
Maybe one.
Yeah, he's not going to have any of it. So, and they're going to come on his turf. No, there's going to be a big smackdown. So,
you know, stuff is going to get real soon. It's going to get real. I have a feeling that no, he's not going to be very good for long.
Yeah.
So
we'll see.
I think that.
But I think we've reached the end, unfortunately, talking about Godzilla, because we're not going to go beat by beat with the whole story. You should have seen this by now. This is just more our love for the big G and basking in the glow of what we love about Godzilla. So,
yeah,
I cannot think of a better person to talk about Godzilla, King of the Monsters, other than you. Because honestly, it would have been me just kind of like, okay, so I'm dorking out by myself. Sad. But it's enjoyable to have your knowledge and your passion to be shared on this podcast. So I truly love you for that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Monster.
That's right. It's the Monster, not Monty.
I put an S in there.
Well,
But thank you so much for this opportunity, and I hope to do it again. This was a lot of fun, and I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And, if you guys are on Instagram, you can check out her artwork. She is fucking amazing with her talents. So I am so happy that we are still able to be in contact with each other and still goof and have fun like we just did. And I hope that, we'll get to do this again real soon.
Yes.
Okay.
Ditto.
Good. So, Michelle, thank you again. And remember, you can follow me on the various social networks. You can email me at monsterscifishow@gmail.com. So, you can send us questions, comments, or whatever it is you want to talk about. I would love to get you guys involved too, so please do so. So on that note, thank you very much for listening to the Monster Sci-Fi Show podcast. It's sci-fi from a certain point of view. Good night. And we're done.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping through Amazon.com or the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.